like this might be a controversial opinion, right? But I think CLI is the perfect interface for vibe coders.
Bold statement. How did you even go about building Local GPT with no really experience in that space?
Well, I would say like the 2023 was like really exciting times.
Yeah.
Right? You could just experiment with stuff, right? Without even caring about what people would say.
Sometimes I get the sense is like people are hammering a screw in wood and it's like, hey, no, don't use a screw, use a nail, right?
Yes, that is, and this, like, it's extremely frustrating, right? The time for learning syntax is gone, right? Like, you don't even have to worry about it, right? Like, I never programmed in TypeScript, right? Or Node.js, like I'm doing it now, right? And I never actually look at the code, right?
AI, in regardless like what tool it's intimate, right? It's way more intimate, I feel, than what you have in your Google search.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, companies can use it to personalize experiences for you.
Yeah.
But like, how much information you want to provide? If you provide your spoken words, right? Like it.
So today's guest is Muhammed Farooq. He's an electrical engineering PhD who actually pivoted to the application side of things a few years ago. He created Local GPT mainly as an excuse to see the limits of RAG with local GPUs and then watch it explode to over 20,000 GitHub stars. He also kept over 200,000 subscribers grounded in reality on his YouTube channel, Prompt Engineering, and he's currently tackling the spoken words privacy in generative AI with his new company, Wright. He's an educator at heart, really, that believes that vibe coding should be done via your CLI and not your ID. I know I had the same reaction. As always, I'm still Abe, and it was an extremely fun conversation. I hope you enjoy. Hi, everyone. I'm here with Muhammed Farooq. I don't know who invited me here to talk to you, Muhammed, but I'm really excited.
Well, thanks for having me.
Let me quickly go from the beginning. You are a crazy man because you decided to get a PhD in electrical engineering. I could say that as someone that got a bachelor's in electrical engineering. I know you did a little bit of work with sensors, smart sensors, and NLP. How did you transition from electrical engineering to machine learning?
So during my PhD is in electrical engineering, but my specialization was on applied machine learning for biomedical applications. So I built different methods and sensor techniques for physical activity monitoring. And also an interesting area was food intake monitoring, right? So to quantify how much people are eating and what type of stuff, right? So these are like very early days of computer vision, and deep learning was coming up. So I tried some techniques to quantify that, right? Now, most of my, I would say like professional work has been on sensor or like traditional machine learning, but I was always interested in NLP as a technique, right? So never really got to like apply it in a professional setting, but when LLMs came out, I think that's when everything changed. Everybody's doing the same thing now.
Yeah. I looked at your background. You had papers, right? You went to conferences and presented. You have patents. You even published in books, right? Like it seemed like research was the path that you were paving. Did that switch?
Yeah. So during my PhD, towards the end, I kind of realized I was publishing a lot in really good journals, right?
Yeah.
But I wasn't really seeing the practical applications. And that's like the problem with most research, right? Like you publish in prestigious conferences and journals, right? But it takes a lot of time for your work to be applied, right? And especially like if it's a very niche domain. So towards the end of the PhD, initially I was looking for academic roles, right? But then I thought like, okay, it's probably not something I am going to be able to pursue because like I want to do work more on the applied side. So that's where I started looking at industry.
I see. What was the first company that you joined that was more in industry?
So the company is called Phyn, Phyn. And it was a very interesting domain. Like they started working on water sensors. So like a normal water meter in your house just gives you how much water you have used, and the water company bills you for that amount, right? When I was looking for jobs, I came across this startup, and they were doing things very differently. They wanted to create a smart water sensor, which is not only look at the consumption or usage, but also tells you what fixtures you're using. All right. So let's say how many toilets events were there, how many showers, what was the duration, right? And another very interesting thing was there was this idea that you could detect leaks in your plumbing system just looking at the water patterns, right, coming out, like pressure and flow, right? And that work was like somehow related to what I was doing. It was very different than what the other competitors were doing in the same domain, right? But very focused on practical applications, right? And like I think everybody's aware, like water damages can be very expensive, right?
I've heard some friends have horror stories on that. So that's very cool. And what was the like tech stack back then?
So most
like playing with GPUs or not even?
No. So this was like even today, like for that specific application, it's mostly random forest based models.
Okay.
Right? So not even neural networks, right? But like the random forest based models, I would say like even today for time series data, they're really good. And now the drawback is like we had to spend so much time on feature computation and optimization, right? So this is like a traditional machine learning problem that you need to find out which features work based on the data you're getting, right? And that is a lot of manual work, right? But still it works.
Yeah, no, it's cool that you have that classical machine learning background, right? Because that is one thing that I've seen is with generative AI, it's like, oh, this is the model we're going to use for everything. And sometimes I get the sense is like people are hammering a screw in wood and it's like, hey, no, don't use a screw, use a nail, right? There's these older classical models that are perfect. Time series, I think, is one that's many times. Like, is that something that you've seen?
Yes, that is, and this, like, it's extremely frustrating, right? So let's say, kind of going back to the NLP example, right? Now, people try to use large language models for everything. The problem with large language models is like, irrespective of whether you are running them locally or through an API, it costs a lot. There are latency issues and things like that, right? But still, you have the classical like BERT models, right? For example, they can be used in very practical applications and still gives you a lot more better performance, right? But people just try to be like, okay, this is the latest technique, so we're going to use it, right? And another thing that I have noticed is a lot of people who are coming into building, they don't really have a good ML background, right? And for that, what I mean to say is that when you're designing a system, you need to think about, okay, how the experiments are going to work, how the evaluation is going to work, right? But what I'm seeing is that evaluation is kind of an afterthought. Right? You build a system, you're like, all right, it works, right? It might work for a few test cases, right? But you don't evaluate it enough that you see that, okay, whether it generalizes or not, right? And that I have seen that people struggle a lot when they put it in production or start seeing issues.
Yeah, and I'm assuming even your background in just like, again, I don't like to call it classical machine learning. There's probably a better term out there, but I feel that also helped you like form a way to like educate people. What's interesting, I was actually looking January 13th, 2023, almost exactly 2 years ago, right? You published your first video on YouTube. Like the days before, what were you thinking before you published that first public thing?
Okay, so I never really thought about a YouTube channel. It was mostly for my friends. So like in my friend group, I'm the machine learning guy, right? Even like before the generative
That's
AI.
That's a good guy to have in your little friend group.
Yeah, right. So like when ChatGPT initially came out, right? Some of my friends would be like, have you seen this, right? So like I was playing around with it, right? I was playing around with it before, but let's say in the friend circle, they saw this and they're like, all right, oh, have you seen this thing or not? This was probably the first time where I thought like, okay, I could show a demo which will make sense to a person who doesn't have a machine learning background. Right? Because like machine learning systems have been around forever, right? But this is like the first interface where a person who doesn't have a technical background can feel it, right?
Yeah, and you felt seen. You're like, oh, you get me now.
Exactly, right? So I started like creating these small videos because like we are in different time zones, right? So my friends are all over the world, right? and started sharing those. That was kind of like a way, because like you can't send a 10 minutes, 15 minutes video on WhatsApp, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, just put it on YouTube, share a link, and that's it, right? So that's
I,
how it started.
yeah, I love that because it's more of a. I didn't create a YouTube channel. It was the tool, right? It was an means to immense. It wasn't like I'm gonna be a YouTuber, an influencer, which I know you probably love calling yourself. But that was.
I don't.
I know you don't. I know you don't. And then I'm pretty sure you realize, whoa, my friend group. I don't have 20,000 friends that are watching this video. How did it pop?
Yeah. So the funny thing is, like, when I posted my first video, I think like probably around 10th video or something, one of them went viral.
Yeah.
Right. And like that was really unexpected, right? And I think on a one day I got like 20 or maybe like 10 or 15,000 subscribers because of that viral video.
Wow.
Right. So that was kind of a crazy moment for me as well, that, oh, okay, what just happened? Right?
Was that the AI avatar video?
Yes.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
you know, when I see the first episode of the AI Agent Bake Off, I sort of giggle at it because Nano Banana 2 nor Nano Banana 1 was created.
Mm-hmm.
And we challenged the developers to build a virtual try-on. And that was hard back then.
Yeah.
Now it's almost one-shot prompt and you're there, right? And for your AI avatar, I saw it and it's crazy to think, like, when you look back at those videos, you were sort of pushing the limits. Now that's not a limit. Like, how do you even think of that?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I don't think like anybody could say that they would have predicted the progress that we have made. It's kind of crazy. I don't think like anybody could say that they would have predicted the progress that we have made. Like for that video, I had to do like 3-4 different tools together, right? And now you do it single shot, right?
Like in development time, how long did it take you to make that one AI avatar?
It took me a few hours to experiment,
Mm-hmm.
right? To make sure like even the output looks good. Right.
Yeah.
So like I would say like at least a day or two from ideation to production, right? And
Yeah.
that involves a lot of experimentation of the different tools, how to prompt it, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like you can use a single service which will do like 10 times better, right? With a single prompt.
HeyGen, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think you're not coding anymore. It's a SaaS solution. It does it all and anyone could use it, right?
Yeah. So realistic that most people who are not interacting with these systems daily, they can't even like realize if it's real or not. Like no, so but here's one thing which has happened, I guess, like after this revolution. Now, if I watch a video, right, like a short or something, right, the first thing that I do is like unintentionally, I'm looking for clues that, okay, is it AI generated or not?
Yeah. You're like, put your hands up near your face. You know,
Yeah.
do you have all your digits, all that stuff. So your YouTube channel, do you think of it as something you should do as a passion project at this point? Because 200,000 subscribers, that's substantial in 2 years. You know, congrats to that.
Yeah, no, first of all, thank you. And like I would say when I started, like I didn't really take it seriously, right? But
Yeah.
then you create a following, right? Like following in the sense that people start watching it, right? So towards the end of last year, that's when I started taking it seriously, to be honest. If you look at it, my videos, like I think before, towards the end of like I wasn't even showing my face, right? It was like, I just put together something together, right? But the idea was always it to be more educational content. Like I do cover news, but I want to make sure that everything is grounded in reality, right? And create more educational content, right? And now I feel like I should be taking this a little bit seriously.
So like what are your plans maybe for this year in 2026 for the prompt engineer? By the way, congrats on the name itself. Like that's such a snapshot in time of what was happening in 2023.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of people have told me that.
Yeah, I mean, in the moment, the idea of prompt engineering was you genuinely had to be reading research documents. That's probably where you got the name, I'm assuming. So it wasn't something that like in the tech, right? It became nomenclature yet. Yeah.
And to answer your questions, the plan is for the channel, again, to keep making more educational content, because I think like there's a lot of unfortunately a lot of hype around some of the stuff that I'm seeing, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely good to keep things grounded in reality, right? Or at least like what I understand to be reality, right? Because we
Yeah.
don't know like what's going to come out in the next couple of months, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean. You share basically your skill set. You ground, right, your perception of what's happening in the space that's moving so quick into what you know, right? And you're a very solid engineer, developer, researcher, right? And I think that's why so many people come to you, is because you could sort of denoise what's happening, right? I think a good example, if we go back to like December 2024, DeepMind launched Gemini 2, 1 million context window, and everyone started saying RAG is dead. Did RAG die?
Yeah, exactly. I think like one thing I would say is the content creators have done like, and I would include myself as well, right? Because I probably have created some video. Like they have done a disservice on hyping up the expectations of people, right? And the reason I say this is most of the demos that we see, even from Frontier Labs, right? When they release models, they would have a really well-crafted demo with a few prompts. You get a working system, right? But I think still people who are not technical, when they go and they try this system, they expect like magic in 5-10 prompts, right?
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen. Like these systems are really good at building web apps and really nice web pages and things like that, right? But anything that is going to be more complex or something that you could potentially make revenue from, I think it still like takes a lot of effort.
Yeah. Magic from 5 to 10 prompts. That's I guess the goal of AGI. A question I'm going to ask every guest is, do you believe in AGI?
Okay, so I would say like the way most of the people put it, I would call it a marketing term. Right. Now, that being said, okay, I think there's this concept of personal AGI that is coming up, right? And that's what I think is going to be the goal, right? If you look at the progress from 2023 to now, even the Frontier Labs wouldn't have like predicted it, right? So like we need to take a snapshot in time and then compare it to the progress, right? So these systems, even if we don't make any progress, I think you can still make some really useful applications on top of those, right? Now, whatever you call them, I don't think it matters, right? But still, these are really useful systems, and the progress we're seeing, I think it's going to keep improving, right?
Yeah. You talked a little bit about frameworks, and I think also 2023, 2024, even now, right? Even up to 2026, but especially those 2 years, frameworks was a big part, not just of just the models popping up like frontier models, but the frameworks like LangChain, LaMendix, Google ADK, all these. When you find a new framework like this, like what is your process to evaluate and to see, am I going to use this, or am I going to have to just skip on this hype?
Okay, so in the early days, I think they were extremely helpful.
Yeah.
Right. Because even as a developer, like there were so many different standards that even just interacting with an LLM, right, it was really hard. Now people started using like the OpenAI completion API, right? But in the early days, I think they were really great to get you started, right? Now that also comes with a lot of decisions that the framework creator makes, which probably are not optimal for certain applications. But now I think it's better to rely on tools that the frontier model creators are making. Right. So each one of them have their own set of tools. For example, ADK is a really good example of that, right? I would bet more on ADK compared to like a third-party framework if I am using Google products, right? Similar, like I think OpenAI also has their agent SDK, right? So that would be another example. So right now, like my way of thinking is, if a frontier model company is providing something, it's probably better to stick to that.
Yeah. No, that's, I guess also you're in that domain too, right? You sort of, I guess, built your own framework, open source, Local GPT. I looked up at the Git repo. It was Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 10:30 p.m. I think 10:30 p.m. is when all the development work is done by us.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Like right before 10:30 p.m., what were you thinking?
Okay, so the local GPT story, I think it's interesting. So for those who are not familiar with it, it's a RAG framework where you can use local models. And one thing which I have focused a lot on the last few years is local AI systems, right? Whether it's like speech system, speech generation, right? So before local GPT, there was another project, which I would say like the first RAG system that you could run local was private GPT.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at the repo and it was a really well implemented system. But the problem they had was you could only run it on CPUs. They didn't have GPU support.
Yeah.
So you would have like indexing time was taking forever, and then like even the generation, right? So I thought like, okay, what if you create a similar system and you like make sure that it can use your GPU, right?
Yeah.
So that was like the basic idea behind local GPT, right? And I didn't really think about it because like whether it's going to get any traction or not, because this was my first piece of software that I open sourced.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if that's so. You have a good track record of the first things you try. Like the first time you published YouTube channel, it worked. The first time you published open source, it got 20,000 stars. I'm excited to what other firsts you have in your career because it seems like you're pretty much batting 100. But local GPT, it was interesting. I did see it, I think in 2024-ish. When you were developing it, you mentioned, right? Like you wanted to surface like the GPU layer, right, into this experience. Did you have like experience developing in that domain?
No, not really.
So you saw, okay, there's a need. At least you found that there's a need, right? Especially as more people add more maybe sources into the system and they demand more, right? CPUs are obviously gonna hit some type of threshold. How did you even go about building local GPT with no really experience in that space?
Well, I think I would say like the 2023 was like really exciting times.
Yeah.
Right? You could just experiment with stuff, right? Without even caring about what people would say. And there was literally nothing, to be honest, right? So that's why like I put it together in even for my own use case, I wanted to see how far we can push these systems. Right. And like that was kind of the idea. And I think I made a video about it, just explaining here's how you could potentially make a system like without any optimizations whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
Those were like never in my mind. But it was just a personal project. And through I was like for my own learning, right? That's kind of how I went about it.
Yeah, and it seemed also you tied it with your YouTube channel, right? Sort of publishing the experience. I'm pretty sure that also gave you like a forcing function of getting feedback from people, right? I think that's a trend we're seeing for sure. I think started, if not in 2024, for sure by 2025, of especially founders that are more like joining accelerators is publishing content of their experience as they're building.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You sort of did that in the open source domain. Like what benefits did you see? And maybe for someone that's starting out, maybe with no YouTube channel, like what recommendations would you give them?
So like right now having a platform, I think it's a must. Right? Because I have seen really good projects in the open source domain and there's so much being released. It's really hard to keep track of things or like even find good things. Yeah. So like I usually joke that I have a PhD, but nobody cared about my PhD, right? People start caring about it after like having a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So that's how I would frame it. Like anybody who's building, and especially if you want people to know about it, it's a must to have some sort of platform for yourself. And it depends whether YouTube or I see like a lot of people posting on X. Like I'm not really that active on X, right? But that's another really good platform if you're building something.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And I think, like you said, right, it's a must. And I do think more and more that's becoming true just because the barrier to entry, so it's getting lower and lower, because of the tech stack that people have. Like I am curious, what is the tech stack that you have that you're currently using? The way that I see it is there's IDE, CLI, and like background workers. What does your tech stack look like?
Okay, so for me, I have mostly moved to CLI-based tools.
Okay.
Yeah,
Why?
and I think it's a perfect, like this might be a controversial opinion, right? But I think CLI is the perfect interface for vibe coders, right? So
Bold
here's my
statement.
theory, right? Traditionally, programmers used to program in IDEs. You want to look at your code, all the diffs and everything, right? CLI seems very intimidating when you look at it in the beginning. Okay, that's just one place where I just type something and I don't even see anything, right? But kind of the promise of vibe coding was you just tell the agent what to do, right? And it's going
Yeah.
to do it. You don't even have to look at the code, right? So it abstracts everything away from you, right? Like, okay, just a simple interface that you can interact with, right? And I have found that the tooling around CLIs is getting so better that you don't really need an IDE anymore, right? So like as an example would be for Local GPT or even some of my other projects, like I do a lot of UI work now, right? Which I had never done before, right? Now, the way I test UIs now is I would have like an MCP, like let's say Playwright MCP connected to the agent, right? And it can go and take actions and I can see in real time what exactly it's doing. Right? So I
Yeah.
don't even have to open anything, right? And the same is true for like other interfaces that they're there, right? So I think like CLI is a very clean interface with a lot of different helpful tools that are available now. Right? And that's I mostly use now.
So a mixture of MCP tools, and as well CLI. What are you using on the CLI?
Mostly Cloud Code.
Yeah,
That's
makes
kind
sense.
of my go-to now.
Yeah, it's okay. No, that is useful to know, right? Because I think as you were talking about the promise of vibe code is that it abstracts everything. I started thinking of maybe not the best metaphor, but vibe coding with an ID is like riding a bike with training wheels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with the CLI is like you remove those, but you have to trust yourself and trust the process that you won't fall over, right? And that's intimidating for many people.
Yes, yeah, that is true. But I think there's a method to the madness, right?
Yeah.
Like even when you're vibe coding.
Oh, definitely.
Right. So I have like really strong opinions on vibe coding itself, right? As I was saying in the beginning, like I think we have done some disservice there, right? Like when it comes to vibe coding, it's really useful and helpful to know and understand good programming practices, even if you're not a coder. Like I think the time for learning syntax is gone, right? Like you don't even have to worry about it, right? Like I
Okay.
never programmed in TypeScript, right? Or Node.js, like I'm doing it now, right?
Hmm.
And I never actually look at the code, right? But it's still really important to understand the tools, libraries, and their capabilities that you're using, right? And now I guess the roles are changing from being a software developer per se to like a technical lead or a technical manager, right? So that being said, I think if people complain about AI slop, the responsibility now falls on you, not on the AI agent. So like if you can create a good plan which is solid, right, and then orchestrate it properly, you will be able to build really good systems, right? But if you just let the AI decide things for itself, it's going to be like a downhill road from there.
Yeah. And we had probably one of the more unique ways of meeting each other. You were part of episode 3 of the AI Agent Bake Off by Google Cloud. So I got to see firsthand you develop, right, in a very intense environment, in a very quick environment. One question I have is like, how did you even get involved into that show? And what made you actually say yeah?
So I have worked a lot with Google Cloud and the Gemini team through
Yeah.
the early access program, right? So I think Frank, who's your colleague, reached out to me,
Mm-hmm.
and a friend of mine, Sam, right?
Ah, yeah.
He also has an awesome YouTube channel. So he participated in the first episode, I think.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So like he told me about it and had some good things to say about it. And it was also my first hackathon experience, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
What a way to start.
Exactly. So I thought like, okay, why not, right? Because it
Yeah.
was a good opportunity, and especially like I like the format that you had a problem in place but not the approach how to solve it, right? There was
Yeah.
like a lot of freedom there, right? So then you okay, you can start thinking about how you design the system, right? Yeah. So it was a good learning opportunity. And another thing would be like, I don't really have much experience with ADK, like as a developer, right? So I thought like, okay, that would be like another good thing to force myself to learn about it. Right.
Everyone in the room learns a lot because you
Yeah.
sort of have to. It's very intense, right? It's a hackathon, but I think cameras being flown around you as you're coding, right? Everyone's trying to do their best, which is always amazing. Every single episode, I'm always impressed with the demos that everyone creates in a short time. But yeah, no, I'm glad that you had a fun experience, and again, congrats on winning. In terms of like all of your achievements, where would you stack rank being the winner of Google Cloud's AI Agent Bake Off from like?
I think it's pretty high up there as a developer, right?
Nice.
Like most
Is
of
it?
my.
Do you feel more proud than when you got your PhD, or?
Oh no, PhD is a whole different story. I think my parents were probably more prouder at that point.
Oh, definitely parents, yeah, as they should be, yeah.
Yeah, but like I think with that specific experience, one thing which I really liked, and I'm going to try my best to do it more in like 2026 as well, is to meet people. That's like I although like I have a YouTube channel, but never really get a chance to meet like-minded people like the way where I live right now.
Yeah.
So that was a really good opportunity. And one more thing is like you also get to see how other people approach the same problem. Like we won, right? But it was really nice to see like how the other teams were approaching, right? And you learn a lot from that experience as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like I feel I have the best perspective because I'm just looking at everyone, right? Like, my favorite moment was from episode 2. I don't know if you know Brandon, but he also has a YouTube channel as well and talks about AI and I think AI with Brandon. And there was a moment where there's cameras moving around and Brandon is talking, like very focused talking, and his partner is ignoring him. And I'm like, why is she ignoring him? That's so rude. So I walk up and I'm like, did something happen? Did maybe they disagreed in like a code? I don't know. I walk up there and then I just see Brandon talking to his computer because he doesn't type anymore, right? And I was like, oh, that's so novel. Like, I just did not think that was what he was doing at the time, right? But he was just talking. And I know this is something that you're actually working on, right? So I would love to talk about Wright, Whryte. I think that's how it's spelled.
Yes.
This is a company that you founded, correct?
Yeah, that's a product that I'm currently working on.
Nice. So when did you start working on this, and what is the challenge, or like what are you guys trying to solve?
Okay, so it's in a nutshell, it's a speech dictation system. It's a system that runs completely locally on your device. So we're not using any external APIs or anything, right? And the idea is that at this point, I think in the generative AI space, the bottleneck is the input. Because like the models can generate a lot of code like as a developer, right? But how quickly you can provide feedback, that's important, right? So typing has been around for say like more than 100 years now, right? And depending on the developer, the typing speed varies, right? And I think like this has become a bottleneck, right? So the goal for Wright is to provide that interface where you can just talk to your computer, right? And then it's context aware of so there are two parts basically. Like one is a speech to text system, and then a large language model on top of it, which corrects all the grammatical mistakes. You can customize your prompt. So let's say if I'm working in an IDE, it has that context, and even if I mispronounce something, it will be able to fix that, right? If I'm writing an email, it's the same system which works universally, right? Looking at the context, it will format it as an email, right? So that's kind of the how the system works. But one thing I care about, as like we talked about Local GPT, is privacy, right? I don't want to send my thoughts and everything that I type to or say to an external API endpoint, right? And I feel like now we have powerful enough personal computers that you don't even need any external API for most of these things, right? So everything runs locally. We have optimized it for speed and performance and like resource usage. So it doesn't really constrain what you're doing on your MacBook.
Oh, that's yeah, and I could see the privacy portion being something top of mind for people, like you said, because if you're giving it the content being the text, the speech to text, right? That's the content. The contextual side is knowing this speech to text moment is for an email or for preparing for a podcast or for this use case or for vibe coding. That's a lot of useful information that you're like, I don't want someone to know how I want to communicate. It is very intimate. You know, that's one thing that I found is talking to AI and regardless like what tool it's intimate, right? It's way more intimate, I feel, than what you have in your Google search.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like companies can use it to personalize experiences for you.
Yeah.
But like how much information you want to provide. If you provide your spoken words, right? Like I think. And the second thing is like computers are used for everything, not just like for personal use anymore. So like can you share that data with somebody or not?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the overarching goal behind Wright.
Yeah. And is this your first like company that you founded, that you started?
This is the first commercial product, yes.
Yeah. Well, hey, congrats, because I mean, you have a good track record, as I said, of your first. So I'm wishing you the best on Wright.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for taking the time, Muhammad. I really appreciate it. And
Thank
we'll
you.
talk soon.
Thank you for having me. And it was a pleasure talking to you.